So I'm talking today about Ketu, the south node. Now, it's part of the nodal axis where we have the ascending node, which is Rahu. This shows the karma in this lifetime that you're ascending toward, that you're trying to develop in this lifetime, which is very active, that we're strongly obsessed over. But then there's Ketu, the south node, which is the karma that we've already spent a lot of time on in our recent past lives, and it's very much an area of life that is quite buried and hidden from our conscious experience because it actually shows this area of life where we sort of feel like we've been there and done that already. So we meaning our ego and your identity in this lifetime who has incarnated to really learn something and be obsessed with, oh, I got to learn this thing in this lifetime, which is the stress and worry of Rahu, tends to overlook this end of Ketu, which is like, well, I don't need to pay a lot of attention to that because I've already done a lot of that. This is the thing I need to learn, which is Rahu. But Ketu is often, and in fact, I would say even more influential, powerful, and even important in your spiritual development. You want to understand something, that Ketu represents all the things you didn't choose in this lifetime. Now think about what that means. Think about everything you didn't choose in this lifetime. First of all, you didn't even choose this lifetime. Let's start there. You didn't choose to incarnate. So this whole New Age idea that your soul chose this, maybe your soul chose it, but you don't remember choosing it. You, when I'm speaking to you as this separate person, because that's how you live your life. You don't live your life as a soul who is choosing things. And if you don't remember choosing this, then for all intents and purposes, you didn't choose it, okay? It was chosen for you, and in an Indian cosmological sense, you were pulled here. You were pulled down here by the grahas. They grabbed you, the planets, grabbed you in this lifetime, and all of those things that you didn't choose in this lifetime, which starts with your incarnation, is all pervasive. This includes your family, your country, your gender, even your name. You didn't choose any of it. You didn't choose any of it. You didn't choose your family. You didn't choose those circumstances. You didn't choose the country. All of this stuff I'm saying, you didn't even choose to be a human or an earthling or anything. You didn't choose any of it. All of it was already decided for you. And this is the realm of Ketu and everything that came before. Think of everything that came before, every incarnation before, every species before. Now, we can tend to focus, when I look at the natal chart, on the most important lessons that you've learned in your recent past lifetimes. That's where Ketu really folds in his energy, because that's going to be the most tangible expression of what Ketu is showing in this lifetime, so that you can conquer new territory with the Rahu end of the node. But again, it starts with all this stuff that you didn't choose. Now, in a very conscious way in this lifetime, and how you can relate to it as a useful proposition is all of this stuff. You can go back into your childhood and all that stuff that you didn't choose, that you just kind of woke up, you meaning you as a person, had to find yourself in the midst of these circumstances and these people. And relative to your childhood, it felt like all that stuff that was forced on you in your childhood that you had to master. Again, we didn't choose any of it, but there's a specific part of it that felt like it was very much forced on us in a way that we didn't really like. And we had to kind of master that thing in order to kind of survive the childhood on some level. There was a certain part of all that stuff that was forced on us that we didn't choose. A particular part of it really bothered us. Now, it bothered us because we had to face it. Again, it was something forced on us because of the way the circumstances played out that made us develop these very powerful skills. So once we develop these skills from our childhood, we kind of feel like we've been there and done that and we're over it. Like you talk to someone about, oh, I know all about that because I was raised, my mother was an alcoholic, so I learned how to take care of people and I learned to be very responsible. I know all about responsibility. This might be Ketu in the 10th house. I had to take care of all my siblings. I had to do that. I know what that's all about. Been there, done that. I'm over it. I know. And it's true. We have been there and done that, but the karma's not finished. That would be like Ketu in the 4th house, which says, don't be so obsessed with all this responsibility in this lifetime, 10th house. Instead, Rahu in the 4th house, which would be opposite, would say, therefore, focus on just how you feel and your emotions and developing your emotional state or whatever. So, again, everything about your childhood was forced on you. You didn't choose it, but there was a particular part of it, particular part of those circumstances that really made you develop something that's a great superpower that you have, actually. But it's wrapped in a lot of illusion and frustration because of all of that tangled up, forced upon you responsibility that you had when you were a child. Now, I use the 10th house, but it could be, maybe it's the 4th house. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe Ketu in the 4th house when you were born means that all of your feelings and emotions were taken care of. You were nurtured, you were babied, you were spoiled, or you were neglected, so you had to find your own emotional comfort, and everything revolved around your own emotions. But it was forced on you. It wasn't natural. So you feel like, okay, I already been there, done that. I know what it's like to be emotionally peaceful, but I don't know anything about ambition, the world, responsibility, right? So again, however the nodes work, it's this obsession and this rejection. Ketu is a rejecting energy. Rahu is an obsessive energy. Rahu is externally obsessive. Ketu is internally obsessive or internally rejecting. Rejecting where it's at because it says and feels like I've been there, done that. I'm over it, but really not in a good way. We're over it because we feel like we've passed through it, but the karma isn't finished. So this is the big illusion around Ketu. First of all, it's quite hidden from our nature because, again, this illusion and arrogance and frustration that comes because we feel like we've been there, we've done that. You can't tell me, I know all about that. Let me tell you about what I went through. So you can't tell me anything about that. I'm already an expert in this area of life. Now, again, relative to other things we've done, we are a bit of an expert in that area of life. But we're not a total expert. The karma isn't finished. So we have to go back into that area of Ketu and find the real gems. By the way, this is why a lot of us, as we get older, we wind up going back and reclaiming a lot of the virtues of our childhood, even though it took us, especially through our 40s, maybe even into our early 50s, before we can appreciate all of the trials and travails of our childhood. After the nodal axis calms down in our mid-40s to late 40s to early 50s, we stop obsessing so much over the Rahu end, which is the thing we didn't get to do. And it comes back more in alignment with Ketu, which are the things that felt forced on us, where we're not actually so perfect after all. We have to bring those two things together, right? I've been doing readings based just on the nodal axis in each person's chart. If you wanted to actually find out about this in your chart, it's very powerful. You don't need to have 15 other things talked about either. Just understanding your nodal axis is incredibly powerful because it's this axis of obsession, external obsession, which is Rahu, and rejection or scrutiny or almost sort of disassociation. Ketu often shows the thing that's the hardest to enjoy about life as well, because again, we feel like we've been there, done that, we're used up, and a lot of our relationship with that aspect of life feels, again, like a bit of a burden, so it's hard for us to enjoy it. So I use the example also of like a virtuoso musician. Think about going to see like a virtuoso pianist, right? He plays this amazing music. You're captivated at how good he is. But again, all of that mastery, you experience it one way, but he experiences something very different because he's a perfectionist in that area of life. So you may cheer how great it was, but to him, it's like, boy, if you only knew how many mistakes I made. And it's even one of those things where we can get very twisted up and even start to think, look at all you people applauding for me. You're all too stupid to even realize how many mistakes I made. And again, Ketu can turn into some very weird, sinister kind of, turns of obsessive weirdness because we can be very tangled up around those kinds of things and a very strong, critical, obsessively critical nature. So we have to unravel and unwind the perfectionistic standards of Ketu as well, because it tends to be where we only notice what's missing. We only notice that thing that is wrong. Because again, on a conscious level, we feel like I've been there and done that. I know all about that. But then on a sort of subconscious level, we're frustrated that that thing isn't perfect. And it's very hidden from us. So again, it's a really important area of life. As I'm recording this in early December of 2023, the nodes have just changed signs. They've moved into Virgo. I should say Ketu has moved into Virgo, so it's going to be a time of exacting precision anyway for all of us. And Rahu has moved into Pisces, where it's about developing more metaphysical, cosmic areas of life. So the nodal axis is always moving relative to your nature, relative to your chart, and something that is quite complicated and confusing to figure out. If you'd like to know about this part of your life or your chart, I do have some readings I've been doing. And I also just did a web class. It's free, talking about the shift of Rahu into Pisces and Ketu into Virgo, where it's going to be for the next year and a half. If you want to also know what this means for your sign, check that out as well, because it's a very transformative shift that's happening, and it's going to be in relation to your life, to your chart, and whatnot. So anyway, I hope you appreciated this. Ketu is the one that's harder to understand. Rahu, we see a lot more clearly because he's externally obsessed. But the Ketu end, where it's something hidden, it's this weird frustration. And think of all of the karma that was forced on you in your life and how buried that is, even in your consciousness. Think of how much you never think about that. You never think about that all of these circumstances, you didn't get to choose any of it. So again, it's a very important distinction because we feel like we're choosing everything. And if I choose and force you to do something and you have no choice in the matter, you're going to be frustrated about it. And this is what Ketu is. That's the source of the Ketu frustration underneath it all. But it's also the power of it, because it was forced on us in this lifetime, forced on our ego, on our separate self, because it's the territory we've already conquered. So we don't need to pay that much attention to it. So once all the obsessions of the Rahu end of the axis calm down, we can start to then relax and be like, okay, I understand all of these obsessions. Now, what is this stuff I've left behind? What have you left behind? That's really what the Ketu end of the node is as well. For a limited time, I'm offering 10 hours of masterclasses, Yoga and Vedic Astrology, Quantum Vedic Astrology, and Spiritual Astrology Masterclass. These are 3 great courses that will really help you a lot. Now, in case you don't know who I am, I taught the AstroVed certification course, Dattatreya Shiva Baba, in 2010. Ravi Shankar published my book in 2018. I've been around for decades. I've been teaching these great classes, and if you go to VedicAstrologyEssentials.com, you can get this 90% off discount of these 3 great classes, more than 10 hours, guaranteed value. You can check this out. These 3 classes will give you all the necessary tools to begin to learn Vedic astrology. Please find me on YouTube at Sam Jeppy, Vedic Astrology Teacher. On there since 2007, thousands of hours of classes. Also on Facebook at Astrology Teacher, tons of articles updated regularly, and I'm on Instagram at Vedic Astrology 108, ongoing updates and interaction.